So, welcome back, people. Now we will present you a fragment of the interview made by our journalist Gerardo Soto with Paula Scher. For those of you who don't know her, she's one of the most influential graphic designers in the world. The woman behind corporate logos like Citibank and expressive identities like the one she made for the Public Theater in New York. Graduated from the Taylor School Art in 1970, after completing her education, she moved to New York and worked as a layout artist for Random House. 2 years later, she was hired by CBS and remained there for 8 years as the cover department art director, designing several hundred of album covers. Cher received 4 Grammy nominations for her designs. Cher joined Pentagram in 1991, becoming the first female principal to join the company. The following year, she became an art educator at the School of Visual Arts in New York, and since then, she has received hundreds of design awards. She has developed a reputation for her unique, large-scale paintings, including her maps. So, let's go with it.
Hi Paula, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for accepting to make this interview. You're one of the most recognized graphic designers working for top institutions like Citibank, CBS, or the Public Theater of New York, and I'm a big fan of your work.
Thanks! It's a pleasure to make this interview and to promote not only my artwork, but for me one of the most interesting art fields like design and graphic design.
So, first of all, I want to ask you, why did you choose design?
That is a very good question. I think we have moved from a verbal society to a visual one. People nowadays don't have much patience for reading, so now we communicate visually. Therefore, the importance of design.
Outside of graphic design, where does design have the strongest influence to create impact?
Definitely in transportation and in the sort of things that improve the quality of life, environmentally, in buildings, in prefab housing, in areas like that where human beings need to have a better existence, being able to design better public spaces and parks. All of those things really matter, and I actually think that design is underrated in that way because it is everywhere and it influences lots of processes, artifacts, and even people's behavior.
Who will you say is your inspiration when making your artworks?
Myself, my dad, my husband, my space. I really don't have an artist in mind because when I like something, I just like it. If it's nice, I inspire from it.
Would you consider yourself as a postmodern artist?
Yes, I think so. I think people see my art as postmodernism because of my, let's say, refusal to draw clean designs. For me, expressivity is, of course, of extreme value, but it never comes easily or organized. That's impossible. But I also think that graphic design cannot be fighting all the time with the past. You see, people often say that graphic design is ephemeral, but it is not. Older designs are still seen in the mainstream, and we interact with things that were created a long time ago.
We know you have redesigned the images of lots of big corporates, like Citibank, Microsoft, and of course the Public Theater of New York. Why do you think these multinational companies look for you for this job?
Well, I believe that these really big corporations are just as worthy of dignified design as any other local art organization. I think that is what appeals to my clients, that I make art for them and not just a simple image. At the end of the day, all of the design matters and all of the design deserves to be smart and intelligent.
Talking about the Public Theater, we know that you've been designing for them since 1994. What was the most challenging work you have made for them?
I would say creating an identity. When they first hired me, they had a name issue. They had all these multiple identities and they were working on many projects but were seen as from different institutions. I wanted the public to be just one and to have just one identity. It had to be New Yorkish, meaning it had to be loud and proud.
You've made tons of logos for different companies. What is the hardest thing about this?
Designing the logo is never the hard part of the job, but it is persuading a million people to use it.
And what's the key element of your designs?
Typography. You see, words have a meaning and typography has feelings. I never really liked simple typographies because they neutralize the feelings. A modernist, for example, would argue against that because then the words would speak by themselves and you should not influence the content by creating disorder with them. But then where's the fun at?
When did you decide to use typography as your main element?
Well, when I was a student, I didn't understand it until I started to see type as something with spirit and emotion, so I just tried to manipulate it in order to communicate my feelings and it worked.
How has your designs changed over time?
Well, when I was young, I used to do all my stuff by hand. I was used to ripping, erasing, pasting, and touching my art supplies. When we became computerized, I felt as if I had lost something really important to me. And I would say that changed the way in which I process my designs, and maybe it shows.
Do you still design by hand?
Well, I started painting just for fun. I paint these really big maps because they take a really long time to make and they keep me entertained.
Now, talking about your work at CBS, how was the process of making CD covers?
It really depended on the artist I was working with. Some were more famous than others, so my control over the design would change. Jazz covers were my favorites because they had to be classier. Some artists would already come up with an idea and some others just didn't care. So for the ones that did not care, I would just use my typography and that's when everything started shaping for what I really like doing.
What's one advice you will tell younger students?
I would tell them that some days are just not as talented as others. Spend time learning how to design and develop the ability to explain, defend, and promote your work.
When will you say you are more creative?
When I'm trapped in some boring situation, when we are bored, we are used to checking our phones, watching a series, but instead I generate my best ideas because I have nothing else to distract myself with.
What's the goal of design?
It is to raise the expectation of what design could be. So if you're thinking that a line has a prescribed notion of what a line is, well, there might be a better solution, so come up with it.
How do you visualize design and art in general in the future?
It is very difficult to know. Art is evolving at an amazing rate right now. I think we are in an era where technology plays a major role in every aspect of our life, and graphic design is no exception. Different movements in every single art field are presented daily, from architecture to movies, painting, and obviously graphic design.
It was very interesting to hear you talk about these topics. I wish you luck and success in your future projects. I may ask you for another one in the near future to know about them.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to make this interview, and it will be an honor to make another one. Have a nice day!